This is a Best Syndication News video production. On October 24th, 2007, we sat down and talked to 59th Assembly District Assemblyman Anthony Adams. We discussed our water shortage problems and solutions. Adams said that this solution will involve a collaborative effort between Northern and Southern California. We also discussed the wildfires that were sweeping through Southern California. I asked if there was a problem concerning the environmentalists and others who have their own agenda as opposed to the agenda of those living in the wilderness. Adams believes there may be accommodations made by all involved that helps provide for conservation and the rights of those living in rural areas. Although illegal immigration is primarily a federal concern, Adams believes there are actions the state of California can take to alleviate the flow of illegal immigrants. Although employer enforcement is imperative, Adams believes it is more important to secure the border. The assemblyperson talked about methods of identifying citizens as a way of combating illegal immigration and also protecting Californians against terrorists. When asked what issue is most important, Adams said illegal immigration. Here is that interview. We might have touched on terrorism a second ago, but is there anything that the state should do that can help prevent a future terrorist attack?
Yes, the two simplest things are we need to develop a system by which we know who's in our state. It sounds overly simplistic, but the truth of the matter is if you don't know who's here, then how could you possibly guard against people who are here to do ill? We have to get to a place where we know who is in the state of California, and we have the authority to do that. We just right now lack the political will for a host of reasons, but I think that has to be an absolute priority. The second thing is we need to promote communities again. We have really gotten away in this state from the idea of building a community, and there is nothing that is more effective against preventing crime than knowing who your neighbors are and really caring about the people around you, watching out for them. You watch their children, they watch your children. We're looking out for one another. By doing that, the incidents of crime go way down because crime breeds on anonymity. It just breeds on it. And when you have no anonymity, things work out so much better. But we have a culture in California that is promulgated by our desire to drive 100,000 miles between our job and our grocery store and our home. And oftentimes our communities are built out in such a way that it doesn't make it very easy to actually feel communal, if you will. And I think that's a real shame, and it's something that I think our city planners, our designers, our builders, our architects, our engineers really need to work better at, is really designing communities that really foster a sense of community and bring people back to a place where we want to reach out to our neighbors again, where knocking on your door asking for a cup of sugar is a commonplace occurrence, instead of having to knock on your neighbor's door and asking them to turn down the music.
Is there anything the state can do about that?
Of course, and this is the thing. The state doesn't have to do this through legislation. The state does not have to be heavy-handed and use legislation to achieve its ends. The state of California is populated by 120 legislators and a very powerful governor, all of whom, by virtue of the people's confidence in them, have been given a bully pulpit to lead their community. Meaning they will be listened to irrespective of whether they're carrying a piece of legislation on, just because they're considered to be leaders in their community. And in that regard, if we take the more abstract idea that we can just get out there and preach community, talk to people about the need to do this, remind them why this is a good thing and why we should be embracing it, asking them to be civil and gracious and friendly with their neighbors again, people will respond to that. But all too often, legislators get up to Sacramento and lose sight of their responsibility to lead their community. Instead, feel like they're there to strictly be people who try to pass laws. Well, you know what? We are better at communicating to people when we're not trying to force them to do something. Laws are a heavy-handed mechanism for getting something done. If we can inspire them to do what's right by virtue of our words and our actions, we live a far, far much better life, and it's a much easier sell.
How do you think Governor Schwarzenegger is doing? Is he doing a good job?
He has been incredibly helpful in a number of regards. I have taken tremendous, umbrage at a couple of things he's done. It's not an easy relationship because it is so difficult to pin him down to any one particular philosophical bent. partisan bent, ideological bent. All those things seem to be kind of out there in the ether, and you never really seem to have a sense of where he's going to go on an issue. That creates a tremendous challenge for those of us who are trying to craft and move policy agenda items. Having said that, though, he has vetoed a number of bills that we have considered to be incredibly bad bills that have been destructive and harmful to California families and to the working poor. And so in that regard, we're incredibly grateful for those vetoes and for his affirmative votes against those types of pieces of legislation. But I'm not going to kid you, it's difficult sometimes. I wish I understood a little better where he was coming from and where his priorities truly are, so that we could work closely with him to try to effectuate really substantive changes in California.
Probably the most controversial thing he did was the stem cell research. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't know. I could argue that there was a billion more things he's done that are more controversial than the stem cell research thing. I'm a big proponent of stem cell research. I'm not, however, a proponent of embryonic stem cell research, whereas stem cell research doesn't have to occur by taking an embryo and what I believe to be an actual life and cutting out that life. The idea of taking stem cells and doing some amazing work in just the stem cell research lines themselves, remarkable potential. And I think we need to separate the two so that people can understand the distinction, because embryonic stem cell research and stem cell research are two different things, and there is a tremendous opportunity to do work in that field without having to take human life to do it.
Okay, Anthony, we've talked about the water issue, the environmental issues, you've touched on crime and even terrorism. What do you think is the most important issue facing Californians in the next 10 years?
Bar none, border security. Bar none, border security is the biggest deal facing California. When we talk to California voters, overwhelmingly they're concerned with this issue. And because it affects their basic quality of life, to not know who is in the state of California, to constantly be afraid that the guy who's going to hit you is not only without insurance, but is also here illegally, and we have no way of tracking this person, leaving the person who was victimized in the car accident wholly responsible for all the costs, the hospital bills. When a crime is committed against one of our citizens by somebody who is here illegally, somebody who we have no idea who they are, it's much more difficult to prosecute those people. And so we have people who are in hospitals because of gang violence. We have people in our hospitals because of personal armed robbery and these incredibly horrible things. We cannot live in a culture of fear. And unfortunately, as long as we're in a place where we have no idea why people are here or who they even are, there is just no way to effectively combat that. The rise of gangs in California has been astronomical, and in no large measure is due to the fact that we just don't know who's coming and who's going. That is not acceptable, and I believe that is going to be the single greatest challenge that this state faces over the next 10 years.
Have you proposed any legislation yet yourself? Or?
Absolutely. You'll probably hear much more about George and Sharon Runner's gang initiatives. What happened with the gang initiatives is each of us, a number of members of the Republican caucus up in Sacramento, carried different components of gang legislation. Of course, was rejected by the Democratic majorities up there. And then we've compiled all of those together and are packaging it as an initiative to take before the voters to try to make a substantive difference in terms of our ability to affect public policy with respect to public safety. And I believe a lot of those measures will go way, way forward in terms of their thinking and their ability to really give back citizens the ability to protect themselves, to provide our local law enforcement agencies the tools they need to fight these types of crimes, and to hopefully return some sense of peace back to communities that have been ravaged by all this kind of violence.
Well, I think that covers anything. Anything else you want to say, Anthony, that you can think of?
No, Dan, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been a Best Syndication video production.